Winter 1969, 2:17 a.m. The cigarette smoke wouldn't clear. It hung in the air like something solid, thick enough to taste, heavy enough to make your chest tight. The kind of smoke that comes from hours of chain-lighting Marlboros in a room with no windows and air that stopped moving sometime around midnight. Waylon Jennings sat at the table with his hands flat on the wood, staring at nothing. Johnny Cash sat beside him, perfectly still, eyes half closed like a man conserving energy he didn't have. Between them, an ashtray overflowing with crushed filters. 2 coffee mugs gone cold hours ago. A half-empty bottle of whiskey nobody was drinking anymore. The table wasn't messy. It was arranged. Like someone laid out temptations the way a banker lays out papers. And a folder. Glossy. Black. The kind that doesn't carry good news. Cal Hargrove sat at the end of the table, hands folded, smiling like he was doing them the biggest favor of their lives. He slid the folder forward. "I know you're both tired," Cal said, "so I'll keep this simple." It had been sitting there for 3 minutes before he said that. Nobody had opened it yet. Nobody had touched it. But everyone in that room knew what it was. A contract. The kind that gets offered when men are too tired to read the fine print. The kind that shows up at 2 a.m. in back rooms above bars on Music Row when someone thinks you're weak enough to sign. Waylon's jaw was tight. Johnny's breathing was slow and deliberate. What happened in the next 10 seconds didn't just save their careers. It exposed the one thing most legends never figure out until it's too late. How to recognize the difference between help and ownership. Nashville, in winter 1969, was a machine built on control. The Outlaw movement was starting, Waylon and Willie and Chris fighting to make their own music their own way. But the labels still owned the game. The publishing companies still owned the rights. And when you were tired, when you were broke, when you were running on pills and 3 hours of sleep a week, that's when they made their move. Not with threats, with rescue packages. By January 1969, Waylon Jennings was burned out, 31 years old, already a legend in Texas, already respected in Nashville, but also broke, owed money to everyone, publishing deals that paid him pennies, pills to stay awake, pills to come down. The machine kept grinding. Johnny Cash wasn't much better off. By 1969, Johnny had been famous for over a decade. Folsom Prison had just brought him back from the edge. But he was still fighting, still exhausted, still trying to keep control of his own music while the industry tried to package him into something safe and profitable. He was 36. He'd seen men get chewed up by this business, seen them sign contracts they didn't understand, and spend the rest of their lives working off debts they never knew they owed. That's why when Cal Hargrove called and said just a quick meeting, both should have said no. But they were tired. So at 1:50 a.m., they walked into a back room above a bar near Music Row. Cal Hargrove was already there. Mid-40s, expensive suit. Smile that never reached his eyes. He worked for one of the big publishing companies. The kind of guy who showed up when things got complicated and made them simple again, for a price. Ronnie Pike stood near the small bar in the corner. Ronnie had been Waylon's road manager for 2 years. Good guy, loyal. But he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Eyes red, hands shaking. He'd been covering for them, paying bills, smoothing over missed sessions, apologizing to promoters, exhausted from burying their mistakes. And near the door stood Marlene, early 30s, blonde hair tied back. She'd worked these Music Row bars long enough to know exactly how these late-night meetings went. She knew she was only there because Cal wanted a witness. She also knew that if this went wrong, she'd be the one who got blamed. Cal gestured to the chairs. "Sit." They sat. Cal opened the folder, pulled out a single sheet of paper, typed. Official looking. Studio time, tour support, legal fees, medical bills. The costs add up. Right now, both of you are carrying debt that's starting to get noticeable. He slid the paper forward. This is a rescue package. Advance money, enough to cover what you owe, and then some. Tour support for the next year, access to our legal team, protection from creditors. We handle the mess. You focus on the music." He tapped the signature line. "All we need is your publishing. 20% of your catalog, plus approval rights on all future releases. Standard deal. Everybody does it." He paused, smiled slightly. "If you don't sign tonight, the creditors start calling at 9 a.m. Monday morning. Headlines by Tuesday." Waylon stared at the paper. Johnny's eyes never left Cal's face. 20%, Waylon said quietly. His voice had an edge to it, sharp, bitter. "Plus you get to tell me what songs I can release. That about right?" "Standard," Cal repeated. "You keep creative control. You keep touring. We just handle the business side." "And if we don't sign?" Johnny asked. His voice was calm, steady, like a man who'd already made up his mind. Cal smiled. "Then the bills keep coming. The creditors keep calling. The headlines start asking questions. Nobody wants that." He gestured to the folder. "This is the easy way." The room went quiet. Waylon's hand moved toward the paper, then stopped. Johnny didn't move at all. Marlene's hand shook as she wiped the same glass for the fourth time. The cigarette in the ashtray burned down to the filter. The smoke curled upward. The building hummed with the sound of the bar below. Waylon looked at the signature line, at the clause that said publishing rights assigned in perpetuity. Forever. He looked at Johnny. Johnny looked back, and something passed between them. Recognition. The kind that comes when two men realize they're standing in the same trap and have exactly one chance to get out. Waylon spoke first. Quiet, sharp. "So this is what it costs to be kept alive." Cal's smile didn't fade. "This is what it costs to stay in the game." Johnny leaned forward slightly. His hand stayed on the table. His voice was steady, simple. "Help that comes with a signature isn't help." The room froze. Cal's smile flickered, then came back harder. "You don't want to make this decision when you're this tired," he said. "We're tired," Waylon agreed. His voice had bite. "But we're not for sale." Johnny added quiet but final. "We're not signing that." "You don't understand what you're walking away from," Cal continued, voice sharpening. "The debt doesn't go away. Without us, you're on your own, and this business doesn't let people stay on their own for long." "Then we'll figure it out," Johnny said. "You won't make it," Cal said flatly. 6 months. Then you'll be back here, and the deal will be worse." Waylon stood up. Cal's eyes followed him. "Where are you going?" "We're done," Waylon said. Sharp, final. Johnny stood too, calm, unmoved. Cal didn't move. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," Johnny replied, "but it's ours." Waylon turned toward the door, then stopped. He looked at Marlene. She was frozen near the bar, glass still in her hands, eyes wide. Waylon reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded stack of bills, walked over and set it on the bar. "Get out before they charge you for tonight," he said quietly. Marlene stared at the money, then at Waylon. "I know," Waylon said. "Just go." He turned back, looked at Ronnie. Ronnie looked exhausted, worn down, like a man carrying weight that wasn't his to carry. Johnny saw it too. "We're done making you bury us," Johnny said. His voice was low but certain. Ronnie's eyes went red. He nodded once. Waylon opened the door. The sound from the bar below rushed in. They walked out. Cal stayed at the table, the folder still open, the contract still unsigned. Outside, the Nashville winter air was cold and sharp. It cut through the smoke smell, cleared their heads slightly. At 6 a.m., there was a radio spot, live broadcast, morning show out of WSM. 2 songs and a short interview. They could have called it off. Could have gotten right first, taken something to steady the hands, something to make the lights less bright. They didn't. They showed up raw. Waylon's hands were shaking when he picked up his guitar. The lights were too bright. The sound was too loud. Every string felt wrong. Johnny's voice cracked on the first line. He had to stop. Start again. His hands gripped the microphone stand too tight. But they did it. They played. They sang. They answered questions. When it was over, when they walked out into the gray Nashville morning, Ronnie was waiting by the car. "You all right?" he asked. "No," Waylon said, "but we're still here." It wasn't courage. It was war. Within 72 hours, word spread through Nashville. Just whispers between people who knew people. Waylon and Johnny walked out on Cal Hargrove. He tried to get their publishing. They didn't sign. Just walked. Cal Hargrove kept working. But his reputation took a hit. Within 2 years, he'd moved to a smaller company. Smaller deals. Marlene quit the bar 3 weeks later. Used Waylon's money to move to Memphis. Got a job at a recording studio. Better pay. Better hours. Waylon and Johnny kept making music. Kept fighting. Kept refusing to let the machine own them. They were broken men. Anyone could see that. But they understood something most people in that business never figured out. The scariest part wasn't dying. It was being remembered wrong. Being remembered as the guy who sold out when he was weak. So they refused. Not because they were saints, but because when someone tried to buy them at their lowest, they recognized the trap. And they chose freedom over survival. Years later, young musicians coming up through Nashville would hear the story. They'd ask the old heads about Waylon and Johnny. The old heads would tell them, real power isn't what you can do in a room. It's what you refuse to sign in a room. And if they asked for an example, winter 1969, 2:17 a.m. One folder, 0 signatures. They were broken men, but nobody owned them.